Many kinds of smart. Yes, so we spent yesterday afternoon, as you can see, decorating this place. It was quite fun. It's one of my favorite things about Christmas, but I really hate wrestling with boxes and things, so it's always fun to do it here at the church because then, there's other people to help wrestle with the boxes. Instead of at home when I'm the only one who has to fight with the tree. Especially since I miscalculated when I bought my tree. Some of you don't know this story. When I bought my tree, when I moved here, I didn't bring my tree with me when I moved because the one that I had was, it was getting rather ratty and old. I'd had it for many years. So I just said, yep, no, that's going out to the dumpster. So when I got here, I said, time to get a new tree. And I went over to Menards, and I'm looking at the trees. And, that 4 foot and 5, those 4 foot and 5 foot trees, they just look too small, right? So I got the 6 foot tree. Well, I discovered that the ceilings of my apartment are 8 feet. Because with the star on top of my tree, it bumps right against the ceiling. But the thing is that this isn't one of those little skinny trees. No, this is a wide tree. So now my living room is basically Christmas tree. So let that be a lesson to you. Will you pray with and for me, please? Bringer of hope, give us patience. We know there is good coming to us. Healing, comfort, joy, love, peace, and grace. But it is so hard to wait. May your wisdom sustain us in hope in these Advent days as we wait for Christmas. Well, and let's think about Christmas. It brings back all the memories. So I'm going to bring up another memory. When I was small, my family's yard included a pussy willow bush. Some of you probably had pussy willows in your backyard when you were growing up. And one of the first signs of spring that I learned to watch for was the buds on the pussy willows. Their bark turns red, and the pussy willow, the buds themselves start swelling. And even when there's still snow on the ground, they'll start getting big and getting ready to pop open, right? You knew spring was coming. You could tell if you watched those bushes. And as a matter of fact, when I lived in Germany, the florist shops had bundles of the pussy willow branches that you could buy in the florist shops and take home and put in a vase, so that if you didn't happen to have a pussy willow bush or a yard, which we didn't, you still had those wonderful branches of pussy willow getting green and the buds popping out. So you knew when those buds popped and you could start petting those little soft buds that really do feel like cat fur, that you knew that spring was coming. So what are the things that we watch for, that we're impatient for? Well, like at a baseball game, we want it to start, right, Rick Barco? We watch as the crew rolls back the tarp, and the players come out and start tossing the ball around to warm up. And the hot dog and popcorn and program vendors start going around through the bleachers, right? And we know that the game will be starting soon. Those are all signs that the game is about to start, or will be starting soon. Just like the pussy willow buds are signs of spring, right? So signs the game's about to start, signs of spring. Today, we're remembering World AIDS Day. It was actually yesterday on the 1st, but because this is Sunday, the closest to Sunday, we're remembering it today. We remember the ones we loved and honor their lives, and to rededicate ourselves to prevention and care. And as we do so, we see hope there as well. The arrival of PrEP and Truvada, other possible medications in the pipeline. So these are signs. The pussy willow buds, the medications, the players coming out on the field. These are signs of hope, of what is to come, right? What we are hoping will come. Now, Jeremiah, in our reading, is talking about the anointed one. That's what Messiah means. Messiah is anointed one. It's the Savior of Israel. Now, quite certainly, in the first century of the Common Era, Israel needed a savior. Israel was occupied by Rome. Rome was the greatest power in Europe and the Middle East and North Africa at that time. The Roman Empire stretched from England, actually the border with Scotland, all the way down through North Africa and east to what's now parts of Iran and Iraq and up through Germany. I mean, they basically had much of what's now Western Europe, as well as parts of Asia and Africa. It was huge. Because they were extremely well organized and very good engineers, they were able to do that, to maintain that empire. That engineering let them have roads, which meant transportation and travel and communication. And their organization let them have a taxation system that would put the IRS to shame, let me tell you. This is the government that conquered and occupied Israel. Okay? But it was more than a political conquest. In the ancient world, politics and religion were interwoven. The ruler ruled because the gods willed for him, and yes, it was almost always him, to rule. And in return for this power, they demanded sacrifice and tribute and magnificent temples, or that's what their priests said. And so people sacrificed to the gods. And when they were conquered, they switched from their gods to the conqueror's gods, who obviously were more powerful because they had been conquered, right? They were stronger because the conquerors won. By that thinking, the Romans then expected all those they conquered to worship their gods. The only exception was the Greeks, and the Greeks are always an exception, so we won't go there. But everybody had to worship the Roman gods, which eventually included the emperor. The emperor became a god, and you had to sacrifice to the emperor as well, right? So, because that was how it went, most people just sort of sighed, changed the names of their most important gods and goddesses to correspond with the Roman gods and goddesses, and went about their business. After all, one unpredictable deity was pretty much like another. But not the people of Israel, not the Jewish people. They had only one God, and they refused to even say the name of their God. They said it was too holy to be spoken. There were no statues of their God, who, they said, forbid the worship of carved images. So the Romans didn't really know quite what to do with this. They didn't have a name, and they didn't have an image. They didn't know what this God was all about. And the Jews said, we will not worship the emperor. We only worship God. The Romans finally relented. I'm sure it was with extreme reluctance, but they realized that if they didn't, they wouldn't have enough people to actually populate Israel. Because if you're going to execute, all these people for heresy, you're not going to have anybody to, like plant the fields or, raise the crops or, weave the cloth to sell and to tax, by the way. So the Romans relented. But, as I say, they still occupied Israel and took it over. They took over their holiest site, part of their holiest site. The temple in Jerusalem was used for a Roman, part of it was used for a Roman garrison, fort. And this was part of the quid pro quo. They had the high taxes, and they had land taken from them, and they had no control, but they didn't have to worship the emperor or the Roman gods. So, quid pro quo. Now, the people of Israel were suffering under it because they were poor, they were marginalized, they had no, Rome was theoretically a republic, but they had no representation. They were nobody's clients. There was a lot of, as I said, the taxes were very high. You had to be a citizen, of Rome to have any say in anything, and you want to talk about citizenship rules, you pretty much had to be born a citizen of Rome. There were very few paths to citizenship if you weren't born a citizen. So, yeah, the people of Israel needed a savior and needed hope. And many people thought the time had come. There are several records of individuals who proclaimed themselves Messiah right around this time. If you read the Jewish historian turned Roman, Josephus Flavius, he wrote the Jewish Wars. he records several instances of these people calling themselves Messiah. And that's why when you read about John the Baptist, there were all the religious authorities going out and saying, who are you, John the Baptist? Are you the Messiah? Because there were so many people saying they were the Messiah. So are you another one of them? So Jesus was one of many messiahs in that time period, but his story is different. Most obviously, his teachings have endured through the centuries. And he didn't directly advocate the overthrow of the government. He was a little more subversive, trying to change the hearts and minds of people in order to change the government. But what Jesus is talking about here in the passage of Luke is not his coming, he's already there, right? But what his disciples understood as his return. As his return, or the rule of God, the realm of God. That's when those things will all be set right. And Jesus points out to the disciples that just as they know when spring is coming, that the leaves on the fig trees sprout, or the pussy willow buds open, or a new drug is released to the market. Those signs offer hope of spring, of summer, of preservation and care. We're in the church season known as Advent, from Latin meaning approaching. What are we approaching? Christmas, of course. Advent is a time of preparation for Christmas, just like Lent is a time of preparation for Easter, which is why we use purple for both, because purple is the color of preparation. Some churches use blue, that's why I have a blue stole, but there's blue and purple are both used. And as we prepare for Christmas, we carry 4 themes with us during these 4 weeks. Hope, peace, joy, and love. And each week of Advent, we consider one of those themes. Hope sees those pussy willow buds, those batters warming up, those new leaves on the fig tree, new and better treatments and preventive medications, tumult and turmoil in the world, and knows something is coming. Something long awaited, something that will bring goodness with it. Warmth and light, the season of sowing and cultivating, the easing of suffering and of a possible vaccine, the realm of God, the rule of God's rules. Hope waits with one candle lit, waiting in all God's names. Amen.